Fast Lawyer VR Reviews. For sexy VR reviews, hit the subscribe button. Hello, I'm Fast Lawyer. Today we are going to review Undead Citadel. Undead Citadel released on June 8th, 2023 on the Steam store by developer Dark Curry. It normally retails for $30. It's on a release sale, 10% off, and I did receive a free Steam key through the Steam Curator Connect program to review this game. I tested the game out on the MetaQuest 2 using link cable. Undead Citadel is an arena combat game with a single player campaign. It does have a paper thin story along with a horde mode and a sandbox mode. The combat features over 60 hand-to-hand combat weapons, including swords, axes, warhammers, maces, shields, bows, explosives, and also potions such as slow motion, strength, or freeze potions to mutate your powers. There's also some light puzzles. Most of the real puzzles involve figuring out how to get around an obstacle, but there are also mini-game type puzzles that involve opening chests or locked doors. I want to estimate it took me approximately 7 hours to get to the final boss of this game, and I did make multiple attempts, but I was just unable to beat the final boss. It is a fun fight, but it's also a very long fight, and it's an endurance fight, and I'm confident I got really close to beating the boss, but I just got too tired and I didn't want to restart from the very beginning of the level. And I think for most people there's going to be 5 to 7 hours of content for the single player campaign depending on skill level. Keep in mind there is a horde mode and also a sandbox mode. And I should state I did play this game on normal difficulty, and I did not want to change difficulty because honestly I thought the game was, if anything, a little on the easy side, especially up until that last tense level. Undead Citadel is currently on a mixed review status on the Steam store, and I have to say I certainly understand why that is. I personally was very disappointed playing this game, and I have to say I don't think this is a good game at all currently as is, but I think there's enough here, there's enough positives that I can give it at least a tepid recommendation or a wait for sale recommendation. And let's start with the basics. Undead Citadel is running on the Unity engine on my RTX 3080 with the graphical settings on high. I was getting variable frame rates anywhere from 90 frames per second, and it would drop all the way to 45 frames per second just depending on what was happening in the game. Usually when there was fire or lots of enemies on screen is when the game's frame rates would drop. You do have full locomotion along with smooth and snap turning. You can adjust height so you can comfortably play seated or standing. You can set the speed of your smooth turn. There is button crouch available, although there is no jumping. You also have magnet hands, so it's very easy to pick up items off the ground. I should note that there are several graphical settings. I did not try to lower the settings to get smoother frame rates. I've read lots of differing opinions on the visuals for this game. For me personally, I did not really enjoy the visuals of this game. I found the visuals to be washed, to be muddy. I found the lighting to be unnatural. There was a graininess to the game, a little bit of blurriness, and also just like a green tint, especially in the dark areas of this game. Equally, I was not a fan of the sound mix of this game. I found the spatial audio not to be very good. I often couldn't tell where the Undead were coming from. I found the voiceovers to be pretty bad. The ambient sounds were almost non-existent, and the musical soundtrack was forgettable. I also was not a big fan of the core gameplay here. The melee combat is just simply several notches below the top melee combat in VR. It's not horrible, it's just passable. Combat felt floaty and unresponsive at times. It was often the case that I couldn't tell when I was hit other than seeing the "you're dead" screen. So obviously I've mentioned a lot of negatives, so why am I still going to give this a tepid recommendation? Well, this does have several positives as well. First of all, this game does have a really good atmosphere, and overall it does have a solid single player campaign with a mix of action, puzzles, and climbing, even if the climbing is really bad. Weapon durability is not really good, but it does force you to try the different weapons weapons in this game. And I think that ends up being a good thing because it keeps it fresh. And the differences aren't great, but you do get to see the differences between a one-handed sword or a two-handed mace. And just by swinging the weapon, you can tell, oh, this is meant as a two-handed weapon versus a one-handed weapon. Another positive here is I think the archery is actually pretty good. It's not the best. It doesn't compare to Undead, but I think for a combat arena focused game, it's actually pretty good. However, I would have preferred to have seen more different types of arrows other than just the fire arrow. While there is only one type of enemy, undead enemies, there is a variety within those. You have the archers, you have those big tanky enemies with a lot of armor. You do get to see some of the different movesets from the different types of undead, and then also you have the final boss where there's a whole final boss strategy you have to follow. I personally would have preferred more variety within the enemy types, and so what ends up happening here is that a lot of difficulty and challenge in this game is just the sheer amount of enemies you face, and especially with limited resources as far as being able to heal yourself. Early on in the game there's lots of health everywhere, but later on in the game there's hardly any. And while the physics overall are not great, for example having to move barrels into certain spots or for the enemy combat, it does have some nice touches, such as being able to use candles to light other candles, or being able to decapitate zombies or tear off their limbs. So overall I'm going to give this game a 6 out of 10. Like I said, you might want to wait for a sale, and I think with a few tweaks to the combat it can actually be a good game in the future. We'll see if that happens. Anyways, I'm Fast Lawyer. If you enjoyed my video review, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And as always, have a wonderful day. Goodbye.